They said the forest was haunted, but Aurora had never believed in ghosts. Only memories. The trees loomed like sentinels in the dying light, their gnarled branches twisting into claws overhead as she trudged through the underbrush. Her boots were soaked from the marshy mosses clinging to the earth, and her breath puffed in the cool dusk air. She hated the silence, it gave her thoughts too much room to creep in. Thoughts of him. Of Silas. Of the night he told her she was his, marked her without her permission, and left her with a scar that still burned beneath her skin like old fire. She came here every evening now. Past the ancient stones where no pack dared tread. Past the ridge where even the owls were silent. Her wolf liked it here. The deeper she went, the stronger it stirred within her, restless, hungry, unsettled. Something else lived here. Something old. Aurora stopped by a fallen tree blanketed in thick green moss and sat down, pulling her knees to her chest. The moment her body stilled, her wolf whispered. "He watches." She stiffened. "No one followed me," she muttered aloud. "Not Silas. Not this time. Another." The hairs on her neck stood up. The wind had shifted. She inhaled slowly. Pine. Earth. Blood. And something else, immortality. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Not shifter quiet. Confident. Measured. Barely trying to hide. She was on her feet in a second, claws unsheathed, gold eyes blazing. From the shadows, he emerged. A man, if you could call him that. Towering, elegant, sculpted like a god carved from obsidian. His long dark coat clung to his frame, and his crimson eyes glowed faintly beneath his dark, tousled hair. His beauty was unnatural. Unholy. His skin was pale, but his movements, those were not of a vampire. They were feral. Controlled. A predator in a noble's skin. "Impressive," he said, his voice like molten silver. "You caught my scent before I wanted you to." "Who the hell are you?" Aurora snarled. Her wolf paced furiously. Danger. Power. Hybrid. His smile was slow. Kael Virilian. Alpha of the Virilian Circle. He stepped closer. The air grew cold. She blinked. "That's a vampire name." "And werewolf title," he replied smoothly. "I am both." Aurora's heart stuttered. The legends weren't true. They couldn't be. Yet here he was, the forbidden child of blood and moon. Aurora's claws didn't retract. Her instincts screamed to run, to shift and disappear into the forest like mist. But she didn't. Couldn't. Her body was caught in the gravity of him, of it. Because this man wasn't just powerful. He was ancient. Unnatural. And beautiful. "What do you want?" she asked, voice low, throat tight. Kael cocked his head. The way he studied her made her skin itch, like she was a puzzle he'd seen before but couldn't quite remember how the pieces fit. "To watch," he said softly. "To confirm." "Confirm what?" "That you are who I think you are." His crimson eyes drifted down her frame, not with lust, but with purpose, like a general assessing a weapon. "Your scent. Your aura. It doesn't match any known bloodline." Aurora's jaw clenched. "Maybe that's because I don't belong to one." Kael gave a thoughtful hum. "Or maybe, you're the missing piece." That did it. Aurora shifted. The transformation tore through her in a flash of pain and power. Fur burst from her skin, bones realigned, and within seconds, she stood in her wolf form, a sleek silver-coated predator with glowing gold eyes and razor fangs. Kael didn't move. Even as her massive form lunged. She expected him to dodge. He didn't. He caught her, with one hand. slamming her mid-lunge into the mossy ground with impossible force. Before she could snarl, his other hand gripped her snout, not cruelly, reverently. His voice dropped to a near whisper. Your wolf is bound in rage. Not loyalty. That makes you dangerous. Aurora's fur bristled beneath his touch. She writhed, snarling, but his strength was unyielding. His scent, now that she was this close, was a wild cocktail of ash, blood, and frost-bitten mountain wind. I won't hurt you, he said, and for a breath, she believed him. He released her snout. She staggered back, shifting quickly into her human form, bare skin, gasping, flushed. Kael respectfully averted his gaze and tossed her a long, black cloak. You need answers, he said simply. And you won't find them running from shadows in the woods. She wrapped the cloak around her and stared. Why me? Kael looked back, and for the first time, his voice lost its arrogance. Because something's coming, he said. And you're the only one strong enough to stop it. The cloak hung heavy around Aurora's shoulders, thick and worn like it had seen centuries of storms. She should have dropped it. Thrown it back in his face. But the warmth it gave was comforting, and so was the strange steadiness she felt when Kael stood near. She eyed him warily. Let me guess. You want me to come with you. I want you alive, he said, voice grave. But I won't force you. I don't need your loyalty. Not yet. You think I'm going to follow a stranger into the dark because he throws around words like, you're the only one? She laughed bitterly. I've heard that line before. Kael's jaw flexed, but he didn't argue. Instead, he turned and walked several paces to the edge of the cliff, the wind tugging at the edges of his coat. The trees below danced in shadows and moonlight. His silhouette looked carved from the void. Do you know what this place is? He asked suddenly. The Wailing Forest? Aurora shook her head, cautious. It's not just haunted by wolves who lost their mates, he said. This is where the Crimson Pact was broken, where hybrids like me were cast out and hunted. Her breath caught. Crimson Pact, that's just a story told to scare pups. He looked over his shoulder, his crimson gaze glowing. It was real. Is real. And it's reawakening. A quiet settled over them. Heavy. Final. Aurora's wolf whimpered low in her mind, unsettled. You think I'm part of it? She asked, crossing her arms. Part of some long-dead prophecy? Kael didn't answer right away. Then, softly, no. I think you're what comes after the prophecy. A new ending to an old war. She hated how much those words struck something in her. I don't trust you, she said. I wouldn't trust me either, he replied without missing a beat. But I do know this, if you stay here, Silas will find you. Her stomach turned. You know about Silas? I know he's not the alpha he pretends to be, Kael said. And I know he'll return. Soon. He stepped toward her then, slow, deliberate. Come with me. Learn what you are. Before he turns you into something you'll regret. Aurora didn't answer right away. Her instincts screamed to run, back to her den, back to the safe silence she had carved out of the world for herself. But her wolf. Her wolf leaned forward, ears perked, drawn not by Kael's words, but by something deeper. Fate. She'd always hated that word. It sounded too much like an excuse. But standing before this impossible creature, half vampire, half werewolf, impossibly calm despite the fury she knew lived inside him, she realized she didn't feel fear. She felt curiosity. And that scared her more. Fine, she said. But I walk beside you, not behind. Kael's lips curved, not quite a smile. Something colder. I'd expect nothing less. He turned, and she followed. Just like that, her world shifted. The forest, once her sanctuary, faded behind them. Kael led her down a hidden trail, barely visible through the brambles, the trees crowding in like old guardians. The temperature dropped. They moved fast, almost unnaturally so. His strides were long, effortless. She had to half-jog to keep up. "You could slow down," she muttered. "You'll get used to it," Kael replied without looking back. "You're stronger than you know." She rolled her eyes. "Stop saying stuff like that. You don't know me." He stopped abruptly. She nearly slammed into him. "I don't have to know you," he said, voice lower now, rougher. "I can feel you. Your blood sings with something ancient. Raw. It's calling every monster in the region like a beacon." She felt her skin prickle. "I'm not special," she whispered. "I'm just broken." Kael turned fully toward her, and the look in his eyes made her heart thud violently. "Then you're exactly like me." The words weren't gentle. They were a mirror. And she hated how they made something inside her ache. They continued in silence until the trees broke. There, hidden in the mountain shadows, stood a fortress carved into black stone, ancient, spiked, overgrown with thorned vines. It rose from the earth like a monument to something long dead. Kael nodded toward it. "Welcome to my home," he said. Aurora stared. "That's a castle." Kael's eyes gleamed. "It's a prison," he said. "But tonight, it's your sanctuary." Aurora stood at the edge of the broken path, staring up at the jagged structure before her. The castle, or whatever it once was, rose into the clouds like a forgotten cathedral, each tower bent with age, draped in ivy and webbed shadows. "This place smells like death," she murmured. Kael's crimson eyes glinted in the low light. "It's old. Older than your pack's traditions. It was built by creatures like me, when we still believed we could forge a place between two worlds." "You make it sound like a dream," she said. He didn't respond. Inside, the walls were cold and damp, and the air held a strange stillness, as if the castle itself were holding its breath. Gothic windows rose in long shards, and faded murals whispered of wolves crowned in fire and vampires bleeding silver. "This way." Kael led her down a spiral staircase of worn stone steps. Torchlight flickered to life as they passed, without him ever touching them. "Magic?" she asked. "Residual blood wards," he said. "My ancestors were very protective of their secrets. And now you live here alone?" He gave a half-smile. "I don't live here. I hide here." She paused at that. Hide? Kael, the most powerful being she'd ever met, was in hiding? They entered a wide chamber, books stacked floor to ceiling, alchemical symbols etched into the walls, and a glass basin in the center filled with black liquid that shimmered like oil. "This is where I study," he said. Aurora ran her fingers along a table littered with ancient scrolls and a dagger coated in dried, blackened blood. "Study what?" "You," he said. She turned sharply. "Not you personally," he clarified, though the faint curve of his lips told her he wasn't entirely sorry. "I study hybrid bloodlines. The forbidden ones. The ones the wolves and vampires tried to erase." "Why?" "Because something is hunting them again. Something older than me." She swallowed. "So what do I have to do with it?" Kael stepped close. Too close. "When you shifted earlier, your eyes flashed silver. That's not normal. Not for a werewolf. Not for a vampire." He looked down at her, and his voice lowered to a whisper. "You're not just a wolf, Aurora. You're changing." She stared at him, heart pounding. "What are you saying?" He reached up and gently touched the scar on her collarbone, the one Silas had left. It pulsed under his fingertip. "I'm saying, Silas awakened something in you. And if we don't figure out what, you might not survive it. Aurora didn't flinch as Kael's fingers lingered near the scar. It wasn't just a mark, it was alive under her skin, pulsing in time with her heartbeat, tingling as if it recognized his touch. He withdrew his hand slowly, his face unreadable. I've seen that kind of scar once before, Kael said. On a hybrid who burned from the inside out during his awakening. He didn't live to see the other side of it. Aurora stepped back, instinct prickling. You think I'm going to, what? Spontaneously combust? No, Kael said. But I think whatever's inside you is waking up, and if we're not careful, it will either consume you, or reshape you into something the Pax won't understand, or tolerate. Aurora crossed her arms tightly over her chest. You said Silas awakened it. Why? How? Kael's jaw clenched. Because he's more than just a jealous ex or a rogue alpha. He's been searching for women like you. Women with dormant hybrid blood, distant descendants of the Crimson Pact. Aurora blinked, stunned. That doesn't make sense. My parents weren't vampires. They weren't anything. That's what you were told, Kael said. But bloodlines run deep. You could be the product of something buried generations ago. A dormant line skipped over, until now. Aurora's stomach turned. She remembered the nights as a child when her bones felt like they were twisting beneath her skin, the flashes of silver in her eyes that no other wolves had, the nightmares filled with fire and voices that weren't hers. You think Silas knew? She asked quietly. Kael nodded. I think he marked you for more than dominance. I think he was trying to trigger something. But he didn't finish the ritual. What ritual? Kael turned away. His voice dropped like a falling stone. The binding. A blood-for-blood claim. Old magic. It turns hybrids into weapons, or slaves. Aurora's knees weakened, and she sank onto a nearby bench. So I'm what? Some hybrid time bomb? No, Kael said, his voice softer now. He crouched in front of her, his eyes steady and unyielding. You're more than that. You have a choice. You always did. But you're running out of time to make it. Aurora looked into his eyes, those crimson irises glowing like embers, and saw something she hadn't expected, fear. Not for himself. For her. Then teach me, she said. Whatever I am, whatever this is. I want to control it. I want to face it. Kael smiled faintly. Then your training starts at dawn. Dawn came slowly to the hollow. The sky bruised with deep violet before breaking into a cold, colorless gray. Mist clung to the stones like a second skin, and the air smelled of pine, dew, and old magic. Aurora stood barefoot in the courtyard behind Kael's stronghold, cloaked in a leather tunic, sweat already clinging to her brow. Her hands were bruised. Her muscles ached. Her wolf snarled impatiently beneath her skin. Kael circled her, silent. Again, he commanded. She growled. I already did it. Then do it better. She gritted her teeth and dropped into a stance. The runes carved into the stone beneath her shimmered faintly, reacting to her energy. Kael had drawn them in ash and salt at sunrise, forming a boundary she wasn't allowed to cross unless she mastered the shift without losing control. And so far, she'd failed. 7 times. You're not focusing, Kael said as he passed behind her again. Your wolf is agitated. Your vampire blood is dormant. You're out of balance. Aurora turned to face him, frustration flaring. Because you're throwing riddles at me instead of giving me answers. I can feel it in me, but I don't know what to do with it. Kael stepped in close, too close, and suddenly the air felt electric. He didn't touch her, but she felt the pressure of his presence, as if gravity bent around him. Don't do anything, he said softly. Let it do you. She froze. His voice had changed, deeper, quieter. Almost intimate. His eyes searched hers, not as a teacher or an alpha, but as something else. Something that felt. "You're trying to force your power into a cage," he said. "That's not how hybrids work. You're not two halves. You're one whole. Let go." His hand lifted, slowly, toward her cheek. He paused before touching her, waiting for permission. She didn't flinch. His fingers were cold, but his touch was gentle. Reverent. Like she was something sacred. Her breath caught. "Trust it," he whispered. "Trust me." A pulse of energy burst inside her chest. Her vision blurred. The runes on the ground flared, silver and red, and heat surged through her limbs like wildfire. Then came the pain. She dropped to one knee, gasping as her bones twisted, her skin shimmered, and her wolf began to emerge, but not all the way. Not this time. Her teeth sharpened. Her eyes glowed silver, not gold. Kael knelt beside her, bracing her as she shuddered. "That's it. You're not losing control. You're blending." She met his eyes, her lips parting with a soft, shaky breath. "I can feel everything." He nodded. "That's how it begins." And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel broken. She felt whole. Aurora didn't sleep that night. She sat on the stone ledge outside her quarters, the wind combing through her tangled hair, watching stars blink in and out behind drifting clouds. The training had left her body wrecked, but her mind buzzed like lightning waiting to strike. Inside her, something had shifted. Permanently. The hybrid blood Kael spoke of, it wasn't a myth. It had teeth, and now that it had tasted freedom, it wasn't going back. She flexed her fingers, still faintly tinged with power. Her claws had extended halfway, her eyes had flashed silver again. But there was no rage. No fear. Only clarity. She could still feel Kael's voice in her bones, steadying her during the shift. His hand on her back. His presence like armor. "You're not two halves. You're one whole." Too poetic for a man who lives in a dungeon, she muttered to herself, smirking. A sound broke the silence, a gust, but wrong. Controlled. Deliberate. Aurora was on her feet in a flash, claws out, bare feet silent on the cold stone. Her wolf was instantly alert. "He's here. He found us." A figure landed in the courtyard below. And her blood ran cold. Silas. He stood tall, regal in the silver-threaded cloak of his old pack, his hair tied back, the moonlight catching on the twin scars across his neck, marks from the last alpha he'd killed. He hadn't aged a day. "You've been hiding well," he said, voice calm, cruel. "But you always did like running, didn't you, Aurora?" She didn't move. Didn't breathe. Kael was nowhere in sight. "I'm not yours," she said evenly. Silas laughed softly, the sound sharp. "You never were. But you carry something that is." He stepped closer. "I can smell it. Your blood's changing. My mark did its job." Her jaw tightened. "I'm stronger now. I don't need you. I don't fear you." Silas's expression darkened, amusement draining away. "Then come down and prove it." Before she could move, a flash of crimson light burst at the edge of the courtyard. Kael landed in a crouch, his cloak swirling behind him like a phantom's wing, his fangs bared. Not the calm Kael she trained with. This Kael was raw, barely restrained. His werewolf form shimmered just beneath the surface, veins glowing, shoulders broadening. His voice was a growl. She said no. Silas's eyes narrowed. "And you must be the mutt." Kael smiled, cruel and beautiful. "And you're the mistake I'm going to erase." The courtyard trembled under the weight of silence. Silas and Kael faced each other like titans carved from rival myths, one born of cruelty and ambition, the other forged in exile and blood. And Aurora stood above them, caught between the shadow of her past and the pull of something far greater. Silas tilted his head, studying Kael with cold curiosity. Vampire. Werewolf. Neither loyal to your kind. That makes you weak. Kael stepped forward, slow and controlled. No. That makes me free. Then everything exploded. Silas moved first, a blur of shadow and fang, his claws slicing through the air toward Kael's throat. But Kael was already shifting. The transformation ripped through him like a storm unleashed. His bones cracked. His limbs lengthened. Shadows coiled around his figure as his cloak fell away. In seconds, Kael stood in his true form, not just a werewolf, but a creature of ancient power. He was massive, over 8 feet of coiled muscle and elegant menace. His fur was deep gray, almost black, rippling like smoke in the moonlight. Long, deadly vampire fangs extended past his muzzle. His eyes blazed crimson, not gold like any wolf, but glowing like dying stars. Aurora had never seen anything so beautiful. Or terrifying. Kael let out a roar that shook the stone walls. Silas faltered, just for a second. Long enough. Kael lunged. They collided like fallen gods, claws against claws, fang against fang. Stone shattered beneath their weight. Silas struck first, raking across Kael's shoulder, tearing flesh. But Kael didn't flinch. He countered with a feral swipe that sent Silas crashing into a pillar. Aurora could hardly breathe. Kael's movements were calculated. Controlled. Like a predator with centuries of practice. Silas, by contrast, fought like wildfire, reckless, fast, furious. Their blood spattered across the courtyard, glowing in streaks of red and silver. Enough. Silas snarled, staggering back. You're protecting her. She's a threat to both species. Kael's voice rumbled from deep in his monstrous chest. No. She's the answer to both. And then he pounced. Silas barely dodged, stumbling back into shadow. He vanished into smoke, the ancient rogue trick. But Kael didn't chase. He stood still, chest heaving, blood dripping from his claws. Coward, Kael growled. The silence that followed was suffocating. Aurora descended the stairs slowly. Her legs trembled, not from fear, but awe. Kael turned toward her, his beast still present. His eyes locked on hers. For a moment, she feared he wouldn't recognize her, that the monster had consumed the man. But he dropped to one knee. Head bowed. His deep voice shook the night. I'll always protect you. Even from him. Even from yourself. And Aurora, heart hammering, stepped forward, not to flee. But to stand beside him. Kael's beast form began to unravel, muscle receding, fur fading, bones cracking back into human alignment. He fell to one knee, naked but unashamed, his chest heaving, skin smeared with his own blood and Silas's. Aurora stood over him, heart thrumming like a war drum. You let him escape, she said quietly. I let you breathe, Kael replied, looking up, voice ragged. If I'd chased him into the rift hollow, you'd have been exposed. Alone. She blinked. You thought of me, during that? His crimson eyes dimmed to a softer hue. Always. Her stomach twisted. Not from discomfort, but from recognition. She turned away. You shouldn't care. I'm not your responsibility. Kael rose to his feet, blood trailing from his shoulder. No, he said. You're not. He stepped forward slowly. But you're something else. Something I can't walk away from. She met his eyes again, and there it was. Not lust. Not pity. Bond. I felt it, she whispered. When you fought him. When he touched down in that courtyard, my wolf screamed. Kael nodded. Mine nearly broke free before he showed his face. That only happens with two people in this world. Her voice cracked. Mates. Silence. Not even the wind dared move. But I don't feel ready, Aurora confessed. I still think about running. Every day. I don't know how to love something I'm afraid to lose. Kael stepped even closer. He reached out, hand trembling, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was reverent. Respectful. Never demanding. You don't have to love me today, he murmured. You just have to let me stay. Her breath caught. The moon caught the edge of his jawline, lighting his cheekbone, the fresh scars across his ribs. He looked like a myth worn thin by time. She pressed a hand to his chest. His heartbeat was slow. Steady. The sound grounded her. You're not like anyone I've ever known, she said. Kael smiled faintly. That's because I've never belonged anywhere before now. Her wolf stirred, a low hum in her blood. It whispered the truth neither of them would say aloud. He's ours. And for the first time, she didn't fight it. That night, Aurora couldn't sleep. Not because of pain. Not fear. But because Kael's heartbeat still echoed in her ears. She sat by the fire in the lower wing of the castle, curled beneath a thick black blanket. Kael stood at the opposite side of the chamber, shirtless, wounded, silent, gazing into the flames as if they whispered truths only he could hear. His body bore the marks of battle, clawed ribs, bruised arms, a jagged scar across his spine that looked far older than today's fight. How long have you been like this? She asked. Kael didn't turn. Since I was 13. Her breath caught. My father was a vampire lord. Cold. Distant. My mother, a werewolf from a dying pack. She broke 1,000 years of law to love him, and paid the price for it. He slowly lowered himself onto a nearby bench, finally meeting her eyes. She was executed by her own kind. Burned under moonlight in front of me. Aurora swallowed. And your father? Did nothing. His voice was quiet. Detached. He let the council take her. Told me I would learn from the pain. And did you? She asked. Kael's smile was bitter. I learned what it feels like to be nothing to everyone. Vampire. Werewolf. Neither side wanted me. She crossed the room before she realized her feet were moving. Sat beside him. You're not nothing to me, she said. Kael closed his eyes, jaw clenched. You're only saying that because you don't know what I'm capable of. Then tell me. He opened his eyes again. They were glowing, not just crimson, but threaded with veins of silver. I've killed people, Aurora. Whole packs. Vampires who hunted my kind. Shifters who betrayed their oaths. I burned a settlement to the ground when they tried to cage me. He leaned closer, not threatening, warning. I am not the hero in your story. She didn't flinch. I'm not looking for one, she whispered. I just want someone who won't run. They were close now. Too close. Her pulse quickened, but it wasn't from fear. Do you regret any of it? She asked. Kael stared at her lips. Only the ones I couldn't save. And just like that, something ancient and sacred passed between them, not a kiss, not a touch, but acknowledgement. Two wolves. Two monsters. Two pieces of a war long buried, about to rise again. Because just beyond the forest, Silas was building an army. Miles beyond Kael's stronghold, beneath the ruins of an old cathedral blackened by fire, Silas knelt before a stone altar, the surface slick with blood not his own. Around him, the forest pulsed with unnatural energy. Dozens of figures stood silently in the half-circle behind him, rogue shifters, outcast hybrids, and creatures who wore the shapes of wolves but smelled of rot and magic. Their eyes glowed in unnatural shades, crimson, violet, sickly green. Hybrids. Failed ones. Forgotten ones. But now, reborn. Silas stood slowly, blood dripping from his hands. He turned to face the army he had gathered in secret over the last 6 moons. "The pure ones call us mistakes," he said, voice cutting through the darkness. "The vampires treat us like rabid dogs. The werewolves hunt us like prey. And what has it brought them?" His lip curled. "Peace? No. Just fear. Fear that one day we'd remember what they did." A low growl rippled through the ranks. "But I remember. I remember the burn of silver, the pain of rejection, the scars left behind by a world that couldn't stomach something stronger than itself." He raised his arms. "And now, we are done hiding." From the darkness emerged a woman cloaked in shadow. A seer, her eyes sewn shut with black thread. Her voice was dry as dust. "The blood-bound queen rises," she whispered. "The one with silver eyes and ancient flame." Silas smiled. "Aurora." He rolled her name on his tongue like a fine wine. "She doesn't know it yet, but she was born to rule beside me. The power in her veins is older than either species. She is the daughter of the blood moon. And I will finish what I started." The seer nodded. "But beware the hybrid prince." Silas's smile vanished. "Kael," he muttered. The name was poison. "He cannot protect her forever," Silas said. "When the eclipse comes, she'll have to choose." He turned toward the horde, fangs descending. "Send the first wave. Wolves first. Let them test the borders. We bleed Kael dry before the moon turns red." The rogues roared. And the trees began to tremble with the sound of war on the move. The air shifted. Aurora felt it before she heard anything. A subtle pressure in her chest, like the world itself had inhaled and was holding its breath. Then came the knock. Kael opened the massive oak door before the scout could knock again. The young wolf, pale, wide-eyed, panting, collapsed to one knee. "Rogues," he gasped. "Dozens. Maybe more. They're gathering near the northern ridge. And they weren't normal, Alpha." Kael's jaw tightened. Aurora stepped beside him, eyes narrowed. "Hybrids?" The scout nodded. "Some twisted. Some, like you." Kael closed his eyes for the briefest of moments. "They're moving," he muttered. Silas didn't wait. He turned and barked orders. Within minutes, the castle came alive, warriors called from the lower halls, weapons pulled from ancient racks, enchanted stones lit with crimson light. The fortress was no longer a tomb. It was a den preparing for siege. Aurora was quiet as Kael moved through the halls, commanding with precision and fury. But she saw the tension in his shoulders, the flicker in his eyes. That night, after the walls were fortified and the warriors took shifts at the perimeter, Kael found her again in the chamber with the painted ceiling, a mural of the twin moons rising over a battlefield lost to time. "You should sleep," he said gently, leaning in the archway. Aurora turned, arms crossed. "You're not sleeping either." "I don't sleep much." "Because of Silas?" Kael stepped forward, slow. "Because of regret." She nodded. "I know that one." Their eyes locked, and something fragile passed between them, not lust, not tension. Understanding. The kind that only came from bleeding in the same places. He moved closer. "Tell me the truth," she said. "If this battle comes, if Silas gets to me, and I lose control, will you stop me?" Kael didn't hesitate. "I'll fight the entire world to protect you," he said. "But if I lose you to your power, I'll do what must be done." Her throat tightened. She stepped closer, so close her breath mixed with his. "Then don't let me lose myself." Kael reached out, hand sliding around the back of her neck, slow, reverent. His forehead pressed against hers, and for a moment, everything stilled. "You won't," he whispered. "Because I'll be right beside you when the storm comes." And when he kissed her, it wasn't urgent. It wasn't rushed. It was a promise. The alarm echoed through the stone halls. A thunderous howl, long, mournful, and sharp enough to split the air. Kael was gone before the final note faded, cloak swirling behind him like a shadow breaking free. Aurora followed, heart hammering, claws already unsheathing beneath her skin. The north tower burned bright with enchantments as Kael reached the lookout. His lieutenants were there, eyes grim, hands on hilts. "They've breached the outer forest," Leora said, fangs bared. "Moving fast. They're not scouting. They're probing." "Numbers?" Kael demanded. 30. Maybe more." Aurora swallowed hard. Then came the sound. Footfalls like thunder. Growls like cracking bone. And through the trees, they emerged, snarling beasts with deformed limbs and glowing eyes. Some shifted mid-run, half wolf, half man, their bodies broken by unstable hybrid blood. Others moved in perfect harmony, rogues Kael had once trained before they defected. "Hold the line," Kael growled. "Archers on the wall. Wolves, shift now. No mercy." Then he turned to her. "Aurora. Stay behind me." She stepped forward, silver already blooming in her irises. "Don't." Kael paused. "I can do this," she said, voice low. Fierce. "I need to do this." He stared at her for a heartbeat, then nodded. "Then show them." The battle began with a roar. Rogues slammed into the outer barrier, an invisible blood ward Kael had carved centuries ago. The first wave disintegrated on impact. But the second, pushed through. Screams rang out. Claws met steel. Wolves leapt from the towers into the fray. Aurora's wolf surged. Her body shook. The hybrid inside her demanded release. "Let go," it whispered. So she did. Power burst from her chest, a hot pulse of flame laced with shadow. Her bones stretched, fur shimmered across her limbs, but her shape didn't mirror Kael's. She was different. Her hybrid form was leaner, feminine but deadly. Her fur was silver-threaded with black, eyes glowing not just with moonlight but with fire. Her claws were longer. Her howl rang like a siren. When she hit the battlefield, the rogues hesitated. She didn't. Aurora lunged. Her claws tore through the first attacker's throat before he could blink. Another came from the side, she ducked low, swept his legs, and slammed her jaws into his ribs. He didn't rise. She moved with elegance, with rage, with purpose. From the walls, Kael watched in stunned silence. She's not becoming. She already is. Then he joined her. Two hybrids. Back to back. Their growls thundered as they ripped through the rogues like wildfire through dry leaves. And in the distance, unseen by both, Silas watched from the trees. He smiled. She's perfect. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. The rogues never stood a chance. When the final hybrid fell to the blood-soaked dirt with a gurgling snarl, Aurora stood panting in the middle of the courtyard, her claws slick with blood, her silver and black fur bristling. Her chest heaved. Her eyes glowed like coals. And for the first time in her life, the voices inside her were quiet. Not raging. Not fractured. Whole. One by one, Kael's wolves emerged from behind cover, shifting back into human form. They stared at her, not in fear, but in something far more complicated. Reverence. Awe. And unease. She shifted slowly, the magic peeling away from her skin like mist, leaving her trembling and breathless. Kael was the first to reach her, a cloak already in hand. He draped it over her bare shoulders. "You were magnificent," he said softly. Aurora didn't answer. Her gaze was fixed on the bodies. The twisted remains of rogues who once had minds. Hearts. Families. "What if that had been me?" she whispered. "What if I'd lost control?" Kael stepped closer, voice low. "You didn't." His hand touched her cheek. She leaned into it before she realized she was doing it. He added, "You didn't just win, Aurora. You led." But not everyone shared Kael's calm. From the far end of the yard, Leora approached, armor scratched, brows furrowed. "Something's wrong," she said. "One of them left a message." Aurora's stomach twisted. They followed her to the body, half-crushed, ribs exposed, yet still twitching. One of the rogues who hadn't shifted fully. His mouth moved. No sound. Kael crouched beside him. "He's been spelled." The rogue blinked. A drop of blood spilled from his eye. Then he spoke, not in his own voice, but in Silas's. "Aurora," it said, the voice distorted, echoed. "I watched you tonight." Aurora froze. The rogue's body convulsed, cracking bones with each word. "You think Kael can protect you? That you can control this? But I've seen your fate. And it ends in fire." Kael growled, standing, but the rogue wasn't done. "You were born of betrayal. Bred for purpose. You're not his mate." The voice dropped. "You're mine." Then the body erupted into flame, burning from the inside out until there was nothing but charred bone and silence. Aurora didn't speak. Didn't cry. But her hand slowly found Kael's. And gripped it tight. The rogue's body still smoldered when the pack began to retreat. No one spoke. The flames hadn't just scorched the courtyard, they'd ignited something deeper, fear. Not of the enemy. Of Aurora. She felt it in their eyes. In the two long stares. In the way they averted their gazes when she passed. Even Leora, battle-hardened and loyal, had flinched when their eyes met. Aurora didn't blame them. She was still trembling when she returned to her chambers. Her reflection in the obsidian mirror showed a girl she barely recognized, blood on her neck, bruises down her arms, silver still faint in her irises. She hadn't just shifted. She'd thrived. That terrified her more than Silas's message. A knock. Then Kael entered without waiting for permission. He didn't speak. Just closed the door behind him and crossed the room like a storm. "You okay?" he asked, voice low, unreadable. Aurora sat at the edge of her bed. "I don't know." Kael moved closer but didn't touch her. "I've killed before," she said. "But tonight felt different. Like I was something else. Something made for this." He exhaled. "You were." She looked up sharply. "Not by Silas," he said quickly. "But by fate. You're not a mistake, Aurora. You're a correction." She frowned. "A correction to what?" Kael hesitated. Then turned away. "There's something I haven't told you." Aurora stood slowly. "What?" He faced her again, and for the first time since she'd met him, Kael looked unsure. "There's a prophecy," he said. "A blood eclipse. Said to awaken the crimson air, a hybrid of silver flame and ancient blood. One who will either destroy both species." He paused. "Or rule them." Aurora's breath hitched. You think that's me? I know it is, Kael said. I've known since the night you shifted. But I didn't tell you because you were afraid I'd become her, she whispered. He nodded once. Aurora's voice was trembling now. And the prophecy says she'll have a mate? Kael's eyes searched hers, unreadable. Yes. And what if it's not you? Silence. He looked away. That's what scares me the most. She closed the distance between them. Took his hand. Her own voice cracking now. I don't care what fate says. I don't care if I burn the stars out of the sky. She stepped closer, until her forehead pressed to his chest, his heartbeat steady against her skin. I choose you, Kael. His arms wrapped around her before she finished the breath. Not possessive. Not afraid. But grounded. As if holding her was the only thing keeping him real. The next morning, the castle was colder. Not by weather, by presence. Aurora woke to silence where there should have been footsteps, nods, passing murmurs. The corridors felt abandoned, though she knew they were not. She felt the eyes behind the stone walls. Watching. Judging. By the time she reached the war chamber, she could feel it in her bones. Kael stood at the center, arms crossed, facing the pack's inner council. 5 lieutenants. 2 senior warriors. And Leora, her arms folded tightly, her expression unreadable. Aurora stepped in and all conversation ceased. Good, Kael said. Now we can be done with whispering. Leora's eyes met Aurora's. We're not here to whisper. We're here to ask what none of us have the courage to say aloud. Kael's voice dropped an octave. Say it. Leora stepped forward. Is she still one of us? Or is she becoming something else entirely? Aurora stiffened. Kael moved between them instantly. She fought beside you last night. She unleashed something last night, Leora snapped. Something none of us have seen, not even in you, Kael. Another elder added, she didn't just shift. She burned. Her power tore through blood wards we'd held for a century. She killed faster than even our top warriors, another said quietly. And Silas claims her. Kael growled. Silas claims everything he fears. That doesn't make it truth. But Leora's gaze didn't waver. It might. Aurora stepped forward before Kael could answer. I get it, she said. You don't trust me. Her voice was steady. Quiet. No theatrics. I didn't ask for this blood. I didn't ask to be born on the edge of 2 species. But I've bled for this pack. I stood with you when others would have run. They said nothing. She lifted her chin. I'm not asking for your love. Or your loyalty. I'll earn those. She paused. But if you try to cage me, if you try to chain what I am out of fear, then you're no better than Silas. Silence. Then Leora stepped closer. For a heartbeat, Kael tensed, but Leora didn't attack. She reached out. Took Aurora's wrist. Turned her palm up. And revealed the faint, silver-veined scar glowing beneath her skin. She's waking, Leora said, more to herself than anyone. And the eclipse draws near. Kael's eyes narrowed. Then we prepare. Or we run, one elder whispered. Kael's voice turned ice. If anyone runs, they won't be part of this pack anymore. The room shifted. Kael turned toward Aurora. We fight. Aurora nodded. Then we train. The training yard was soaked in mist when Kael slammed her into the dirt for the 3rd time that hour. Aurora rolled, grunting, rage simmering beneath her ribs. That all you've got? Kael said. She growled and sprang up. No claws. No shift. This was hand to hand, wolf form forbidden. He swept her legs again. She hit the ground hard enough to bite her tongue. You're holding back, he said, circling. I'm trying not to break your ribs. I can grow new ones. She wiped blood from her lip. You're enjoying this too much. He smirked. Only because I know you can do more. She lunged, fast, brutal. Their bodies collided, forearms clashing, his shoulder meeting hers with thunderous force. She managed to duck behind him, sweep low, and slam her knee into his back. He grunted. Better. She was breathing hard, fury and adrenaline mixing in her bloodstream. This isn't about fighting, she panted. You're testing me. Kael didn't deny it. I'm preparing you. For what? He stopped moving. For when Silas doesn't send rogues. She frowned. What else would he send? Kael stepped closer. You. Aurora's blood ran cold. Kael's voice was quieter now. If he binds you during the eclipse, if he completes the ritual, your hybrid form could destroy everything. Not just this pack. You. Her stomach twisted. Then kill me if it happens. No. Kael's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. I will never kill you. His eyes blazed. Crimson and something deeper. Not power, devotion. I will fight you. Bleed for you. Chain you if I must. But I will never take your life. She didn't pull away. You'd chain me? If it meant saving you from yourself? He stepped closer. Yes. Aurora's breath caught. Their bodies were inches apart, energy crackling in the air. Her heart pounded, not from fear now, but from the unbearable pull of what stood between them. You're not afraid of what I am, she whispered. I'm terrified, Kael murmured. But I want every part of you. Even the parts you hide. Especially those. He leaned in. His lips brushed hers, slow and electric. This kiss wasn't a promise. It was a claim. One she returned, fingers curling into his hair, mouths meeting like flame and wind, burning, consuming, kneading. When they broke apart, gasping, Kael whispered into her skin. When the eclipse comes, it won't matter what fate says. You'll choose. She met his eyes. And I'll choose you. 3 nights later, the moon turned red. Not immediately. First, it darkened at the edges, a ring of shadow that wrapped around its glow like a hand closing into a fist. Then it blushed. Slowly. Deeply. Turning crimson like a drop of blood on untouched snow. The blood eclipse had begun. And Aurora felt it in her bones. She woke gasping, clawing at her sheets, sweat-soaked and burning from within. Her heartbeat wasn't her own, it pounded like a drum summoning war. Her wolf was pacing. Her hybrid instincts surged like electricity crackling under her skin. She stumbled to her feet. Her vision blurred. Her fingers sparked silver and black. Kael was already at her door. She could smell him, moonlight, ash, blood, and when she opened it, he didn't speak. He just reached out and steadied her. You feel it, he said. Like something inside me wants out. Kael's jaw was tight. It's the eclipse. The magic weakens old blood bonds and strengthens what's hidden. That's why Silas chose this time. Aurora looked down at her hands, her veins pulsed silver. Her skin shimmered unnaturally. Her breath fogged the air, though the hallway was warm. Kael, she whispered, what if I can't stop it this time? He stepped closer, cupping her face. Then I'll pull you back. Her body swayed. The hunger was growing. Not for blood, not for power, but for something she couldn't name. What is this? She asked. This, calling? Kael didn't answer right away. Then he said, "It's the mate bond. Your hybrid instincts want to anchor before the eclipse ends. If you don't bond by the final moonrise." "What?" He hesitated. "You'll be vulnerable. To Silas. To the ritual. To becoming his." Aurora stared at him. Her pulse raced, not from fear, but from the war between freedom and fate. "I'm not ready to bond," she admitted. Kael didn't flinch. "Then I'll wait. But what if waiting costs me my soul?" He met her gaze. "Then I'll find it. Wherever it goes. Even if I have to walk into hell after it." The world outside howled, not wolves, but the wind itself. The castle lights flickered. Power shifted in the earth. Kael turned toward the high towers. "He's close," he said. Aurora didn't need to ask who. She already knew. Silas had arrived. The castle gates groaned beneath invisible weight. The moon above was now fully eclipsed, casting the world in blood and shadow. The stars dimmed, and the forest below churned, trees swaying though no wind moved them. And from the blackness, he stepped through. Silas. Draped in armor darker than midnight, etched with runes that pulsed in time with the red moon. His hair was loose, wild like a crown of shadows. His eyes glowed gold, then violet, then black. Behind him stood an army of half-shifted hybrids. Not monstrous, elegant. Refined. Controlled. They did not snarl. They waited. Kael stood at the top of the steps, flanked by warriors, but his focus never left Silas. "You're bold," Kael growled. "Showing your face again." Silas smiled, slow and dangerous. "Why hide, when she's ready to come home?" From behind Kael, Aurora stepped forward. Silas's eyes snapped to her, devouring her presence. And he bowed. "My queen." Aurora didn't speak. "You feel it, don't you?" Silas continued, taking slow, deliberate steps forward. "The heat in your blood. The fire behind your eyes. The truth. You're not theirs. You're mine." "She is no one's," Kael said, voice like thunder. "And if you take another step." Silas stopped, raising a hand. "I came alone," he said. "No swords. No blood. Not tonight." His eyes returned to Aurora. "I came to offer you choice." The world seemed to stop. Aurora's heart pounded like war drums in her chest. "Say the word," Silas said. "And I'll complete the ritual. You'll become what you were born to be, not half, not fractured, but full. Powerful. Eternal." Kael stepped forward, eyes burning crimson. "She already is." Silas ignored him. "I won't force you," he said. "But if you refuse me now, Aurora, if you tie yourself to him, you will burn." Aurora felt her magic twist inside her, torn between two anchors. Two bonds. Silas raised his hand again. "One drop of your blood," he said softly. "Place it in my palm. And your awakening begins." Kael's voice was hoarse. "Don't." "I don't belong to fate," she whispered. Silas smiled wider. "I belong to myself." And without warning, Aurora bit into her own palm. Kael lunged. "Aurora." But she didn't place her blood in Silas's hand. She pressed it to Kael's chest. Her blood shimmered. Glowed. It sank into his skin like moonlight on water. Magic ignited around them in a violent explosion of silver and crimson. A new bond was formed, ancient and primal. Not chosen by prophecy. Chosen by her. Silas screamed. The army behind him howled. And the ground beneath them all began to crack. You've made your choice, Silas hissed. Then you'll die with it. Aurora met his eyes, silver fire burning through her bones. I didn't choose death, she said. I chose war. The air shattered. The moment Aurora's blood touched Kael's skin, the ancient magic rooted in both of them ignited. Silver veins of power streaked across Kael's chest, wrapping around his arms like living armor. Aurora staggered as her body pulsed with new strength, no longer borrowed, no longer uncertain. This was hers. The bond was complete. And Silas roared. Kill them, he shouted to his horde. Burn the castle to its bones. His army surged. But Kael was faster. He shifted mid-leap, bones cracking, body expanding. His hybrid form now stronger, brighter, shielded in Aurora's magic. The crimson in his eyes glowed with silver now, his claws etched with the runes of their union. He hit the first wave like a divine weapon. Aurora followed. She didn't shift. She didn't need to. She lifted her hand and pulled the shadows from the courtyard, weaving them into spears of dark light. With a flick of her wrist, they exploded into the charging front line, impaling half the rogues before they took their second step. Archers! Leora shouted from the wall. Protect the Alpha and Luna. Luna. The word struck her like a bell. It shouldn't have mattered. But it did. Aurora turned, eyes ablaze. No survivors. She leapt from the wall. Midair, her form shimmered, neither wolf nor woman, but something in between. Her limbs moved with a grace no werewolf had. Her power hummed around her like a song only Kael could hear. They fought together, back to back, like the moon and its reflection. But it wasn't enough. Because Silas hadn't come just with wolves and blades. From the forest behind, something massive stirred. The trees snapped like twigs. The earth quaked. Kael looked up, and his heart dropped. It was a hybrid. But not natural. It was a twisted creature, easily 12 feet tall, sewn together with magic and agony, a beast bred for war. Its face was half wolf, half vampire, its body covered in bone plating, runes carved into its skin that bled light. Aurora! Kael shouted. Behind. The creature roared and barreled into the outer wall, shattering it. Stone rained down. Screams followed. Silas laughed from the ridge. Meet the first of my revenants, he called. Birthed from death. Fed by prophecy. And bound to your bond. Kael charged. Aurora followed. And the sky turned red not from moonlight. But from fire. The revenant slammed through the gate like a god carved from nightmares. Stone shattered. Arrows bounced harmlessly from its plated hide. Wolves scattered as it let out a sound that wasn't a roar, but a scream. High-pitched. Agonized. Human. Aurora froze mid-strike. Because that scream sounded like her. Kael lunged at the beast, fangs bared, claws glowing with blood-forged runes. He raked across its chest, leaving deep, hissing gouges, but the revenant didn't falter. It turned. And grabbed him. Lifted him off the ground like a child's toy and hurled him across the courtyard. Kael slammed into the far wall with bone-cracking force. Kael! Aurora screamed, rage slicing through her like lightning. The revenant turned to her. And paused. Its head cocked. Its eyes, glassy, milky, focused on her, and something flickered. Recognition. Aurora stepped forward slowly, ignoring the chaos around her. Then she saw it. The scar across its chest. A thin silver line, curved like a crescent moon. Identical to the one on her own skin. Her heart dropped. No, she whispered. Behind her, Leora shouted. Aurora, get back. But she didn't move. Her voice trembled. What are you? The revenant's body jerked violently. And then, to the horror of every soul on the field, it spoke. O-R-O-R-A. Her knees nearly buckled. Kael rose across the field, staggering, blood pouring down his side. His hybrid form trembled with pain, but he saw her, saw the moment she broke, and forced himself forward. It's bound to you, he growled. He used your blood. Silas stepped forward from the shadows, eyes gleaming. It's your mirror, he said calmly. A prototype. A vessel. Made from bone and ash and the strand of your hair you left in my chamber. Aurora turned, fury eclipsing every shred of fear. You used me. I created you, Silas said. You were never meant to belong to them. You were meant to lead us. This was only the beginning. I have more. Hundreds more. Aurora's skin shimmered with fire. No. You have nothing. And then she unleashed. The earth cracked beneath her feet as a wave of pure silver flame erupted from her chest, not burning, but cleansing. It swept across the field, hitting the revenant like a tidal wave of memory and pain. It screamed again, louder. But this time, in grief. Aurora. And then it collapsed. Twitching. Smoking. Dead. Aurora dropped to her knees, drained, shaking. Kael reached her side, barely standing, but there. Always there. Silas watched from the shadows as his creation fell. Then, for the first time, he retreated. But his final words echoed on the air. You can kill my monsters, Aurora. His voice was soft. But what happens when the monster is you? The courtyard reeked of blood and ash. The revenant's body still smoldered where it fell, surrounded by shattered stone and wolf blood. Its twisted form lay crumpled like a puppet with its strings cut, monstrous, yes. But human too. Fragments of something once whole, now broken beyond repair. And in its stillness. It looked too much like her. Aurora sat on the cold ground, arms wrapped around herself. Her palms were blistered from the magic she'd released. Her heartbeat was irregular. Her wolf paced behind her ribs, wild-eyed and shaken. Kael knelt beside her, silent. Not touching. Not yet. Why did it say my name? She asked at last, voice hollow. Why did it sound like me? Kael's throat worked. Because it was you. He gestured at the scorched imprint left by the revenant's fall, where runes etched in its flesh had burned through the stone. They weren't just symbols, he said. They were names. Yours. Your mother's. And someone else's. Aurora blinked. My mother? Kael nodded. He's been experimenting with hybrid bloodlines longer than we thought. Maybe before you were born. That revenant wasn't a soldier. He looked her in the eyes. It was a test. The word struck her like a blade. Kael reached out slowly. This isn't your fault. But it feels like mine. Silence stretched between them. Leora approached, armor scratched and brow furrowed. We've taken stock. 23 wounded. 3 dead. 5 more unaccounted for in the lower wing. Aurora closed her eyes. Names. Lives. All because of her. Leora's voice softened. The revenant's body is decaying faster than anything we've seen. The runes, they're self-erasing. Like Silas wanted it to be forgotten. Kael stood. No. He wanted us to remember only one thing. Aurora's voice cracked. That he can make more. They stood in silence a moment longer, surrounded by broken stone and broken trust. Then Kael said, we'll burn it. And carve new wards into the stone. Aurora shook her head. No. Don't burn it. Kael frowned. Why? She stood slowly, hands trembling. Because I need to remember what I could become. And with that, she turned and walked alone through the corridor, her silver-marked blood leaving faint prints on the floor. The council chamber felt colder than usual. Aurora stood in the center, wrapped in a simple black tunic, her silver-veined scars hidden beneath the fabric. She had washed the blood from her skin, but not her memory. Kael stood behind her, silent but seething. Leora was to her right, arms crossed, unreadable. Before her sat the full council, warriors, elders, bloodline leaders, those sworn to defend the pack, and now, question it. Elder Varric was the first to speak, his voice sharp. We are gathered to discuss the uncontained eruption of hybrid magic during the blood eclipse, and the consequences that followed. He didn't say her name. But everyone's eyes were on her. Another elder spoke. The revenant spoke her name. Shared her blood. Her signature. That cannot be ignored. She saved the entire fortress, Kael snapped, stepping forward. Without her, we'd all be dead. And without her, Varric said coldly, the revenant wouldn't have known where to come. A heavy silence fell. Aurora's fingers curled into fists. If I'm the problem, say it plainly. Varric met her gaze. You are not the problem. Pause. You are a ticking weapon. Leora stepped forward. Then teach her to aim. Don't cast her out for surviving what none of us could. Another voice chimed in, softer. Younger. One of the new warrior recruits. She protected me, he said. I saw it. Her magic turned on only when that thing came. And I've never felt safer than when she stepped between us and it. The council shifted. Aurora looked around, and for the first time, didn't feel hated. Just, feared. Kael stepped to her side. His voice was calm steel. You cannot deny what she is. And neither can she. But if you try to chain her now, after all she's done, you'll lose more than her. Varric's eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? Kael smiled, cold and elegant. No. That's a promise. The council murmured. Tension coiled. Power simmered. Then Elder Marin, the eldest among them, blind but sharp as obsidian, raised her hand. She is change, Marin said. Change always comes with fire. But the question is not what she is. She turned her clouded eyes toward Aurora. It's who she becomes. And only she can answer that. Silence. Then a reluctant nod from Varric. The council will not intervene. But the next time her power puts the pack in danger, he stood, slow and pointed, I won't wait for a vote. He left. So did the others. One by one. Until only Kael, Leora, and Aurora remained. Aurora's legs nearly gave out. She sat hard on the stone bench, shaking. I think they want me to fail, she whispered. Kael knelt in front of her, taking her hands. Then give them something else. She met his gaze. What? His voice was quiet. Fierce. Victory. The training grounds were silent when Aurora stepped onto the gravel. No audience. No whispers. Just her. And 6 young wolves standing in a loose line before her, eyes wary. The same recruits who'd once looked at her like she was a myth. Or a monster. Now they waited for instruction. She swallowed the knot in her throat. Kael stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching. Not leading. Not interfering. Letting her lead. The same way he'd always promised he would. Leora handed Aurora a staff. Make them listen. No, Aurora said, gripping the staff tight. Make them understand. She stepped into the circle. You've all heard what I am, she said, loud and clear. Hybrid. Tainted. Dangerous. No one spoke. Good, she said. Because now we stop pretending. She slammed the staff down. A ripple of silver shot through the earth, controlled, deliberate. Not wild. Not rage. Focus. The young wolf stiffened. I'm not teaching you how to be like me, she said. I'm teaching you how to survive me. How to survive them. She pointed north, to where Silas's army gathered behind the ridges. You think claws and teeth will stop revenants? You think rage will protect your pack? She moved to the first recruit, a trembling girl named Nera. Shift, Aurora ordered. Nera hesitated, then transformed, fur rippling, bones cracking. Aurora didn't flinch. She stepped into the shift. Calm. Measured. Pressing the tip of her staff to the girl's chest. Now hold your control, Aurora said. Even when I don't. Silver light flickered in Aurora's eyes. Her own aura surged, enough to make the air vibrate. Nera wavered. Almost lost her form. But then she held. Aurora pulled back, nodding. Again. They trained for hours, not just in combat, but in restraint. Not just against each other, but against fear. Against the urge to run when magic shifted the air. By the end, every recruit stood taller. Sweating. Bruised. But proud. Kael approached as they dispersed, the last sunlight bleeding into crimson dusk. You scared the hell out of them, he said with a small smile. Good, Aurora replied. Fear can be tempered. Denial can't. Kael touched her wrist gently, drawing her eyes to his. They're not just following you, he said. They're learning from you. She looked down at the prints they'd left in the dust. Then maybe it's working. Kael leaned in. It's more than working, he whispered. You're becoming everything they said you couldn't be. She swallowed. And what's that? Kael kissed her brow. A leader. It started with a scent. Faint. Rotten sweet. Like blood left too long in silver. Kael smelled it before anyone else, just outside the inner walls. A whisper of wrongness that clung to the stone, too subtle for a wolf, too masked for a vampire. But not for a hybrid. He followed the trail with Leora at his side, moving silent through the fortress corridors. Their eyes scanned every crevice. Then they found it. A sigil, drawn behind the West Wing's barracks, in blood. Twisted, ancient, etched in spirals and teeth. Kael's jaw clenched. This is old magic. Leora crouched. Hybrid blood? No, his voice darkened. It's mine. He stood, fury coiling beneath his skin. Someone's been draining from my sleeping quarters. Leora stared at him. Who would dare? Before she finished, a howl pierced the silence. A scout burst into the hallway, breathless. It's Riven, he panted. He's not responding. Something's wrong, he's not right. Riven. One of Kael's lieutenants. A wolf who had sworn his life to protect the border. Loyal. Trusted. Solid as iron. Aurora arrived a moment later, silver in her eyes, staff in hand. What happened? Kael didn't answer. They all followed the scout to the lower war chamber, where the doors had been torn off their hinges. Inside. Riven knelt in the dark. Alone. His armor was soaked in blood, not his own. His eyes were glazed, but not dead. They were glowing red. Not crimson. Not Kael's red. Silas's. Kael stepped forward. Riven. The man looked up slowly. Then smiled. Alpha, he rasped, voice warbled. You took too long. Aurora's heart clenched. Riven, she whispered, what did he do to you? I chose him, Riven said. When you took her. When you let her stain the bloodlines. He showed me the truth. Kael's claws extended. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking clearer than I ever have, Riven hissed. She's not your mate. She's your end. Then he lunged, not at Kael. At Aurora. Kael moved faster. They collided midair, teeth and claws flashing. Riven wasn't himself. His strength was unnatural, enhanced. Twisted. Empowered by a dark bond that pulsed in the veins beneath his skin. They crashed into stone. Sparks flew. Aurora's blood screamed, the bond she'd made with Kael flared like a beacon. Her instincts shouted for her to fight. But she didn't. She reached. Reached into Riven's aura, the part not yet devoured. Stop, she whispered. This isn't you. For one heartbeat, he faltered. But it wasn't enough. Kael had no choice. He struck true, claws to the neck. Riven crumpled. Aurora caught him before he hit the ground. His eyes flickered. Then dimmed. Kael stood over them, chest heaving, jaw tight. I had to, he said. Aurora nodded slowly. But inside, something cracked. Because Riven hadn't just fallen. Silas had reached them. Not with war. But with doubt. And it had worked. Night fell like a shroud. The courtyard had been scrubbed clean, but Aurora could still smell the blood. Still feel it under her fingernails. Riven's death wasn't just another casualty, it was a fracture in something sacred. Trust. She stood at the edge of the old training field, where the grass hadn't grown back yet. The moonlight bathed the ground in cold silver. Wind whispered through the trees like ghosts refusing to leave. She didn't hear Kael approach. But she knew it was him. Always him. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood beside her, silent, the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders. His coat was torn. His knuckles bloodied. He hadn't even changed. I killed my friend today, he finally said. Aurora turned. You saved me. His jaw clenched. Doesn't make it easier. She looked down at her hands. He chose to betray us. But, not all of him wanted to. Kael's eyes flicked to her. You saw it. She nodded. For a moment. The part of him that still remembered you. Remembered what we are. Kael was quiet for a long time. Then he whispered, what if Silas can do it to more of them? Aurora swallowed hard. He will. Then what's the point? Kael's voice cracked, the first time she'd ever heard him sound tired. What's the point of building something if he can twist it with a drop of blood and a lie? She turned to him, eyes sharp. Because we're not building for the pack we are now. He frowned. We're building for the one that comes after. She stepped forward, placed her hand on his chest, over the place her blood had sunk into him. You're not perfect, Kael. You carry too much. You trust too little. And you push people away so you won't have to bury them. He looked down. Her palm was warm. Steady. But you don't have to carry this alone. He breathed in. And broke. Kael's arms wrapped around her, holding her like she was the last real thing in the world. His head dropped into the crook of her neck. His breath was uneven. Shaking. She didn't try to calm him. She let him break. Because strength wasn't just in teeth and power. It was in knowing when to fall, and who would catch you. And Aurora? She caught him. Not as a warrior. Not as his Luna. but as a soul who had seen the same darkness and refused to let it win. That night, Aurora couldn't sleep. Her body ached, but it wasn't from the battle. It was from something deeper. Like her soul was molting, shedding layers, preparing for something she hadn't chosen. Kael slept fitfully beside her. Even in rest, his fingers twitched. His wolf was never still anymore. So she slipped out of bed and padded barefoot into the stone hall, following the echo of something only she could feel. The old wing. Where the runes on the wall no longer glowed, but whispered. She stepped into the ruined chapel, a circular chamber beneath the fortress, once used by the bloodlines for oaths. It had long since been abandoned. But tonight, the dust shimmered with moonlight. And the moment she stepped inside, the world fell away. She blinked. The chamber dissolved into mist. The stone floor turned to a field of ash. And before her stood herself. But older. Pale. Silver eyes hollow. Her skin was cracked, glowing from within like a fire trying to escape. The vision of herself smiled. "You've come far," it said. But not far enough. Aurora tried to speak, but her voice was gone. "You think you can walk this line, part fire, part moon, part mercy, and still stay whole," the vision said. "But you can't." Behind the other Aurora, Kael appeared, chained. Eyes empty. His chest branded with Silas's sigil. "No," Aurora whispered. "No, that's not real." "It will be," the vision said. "Unless you choose." "Choose what?" "Power," the other her whispered. "Or love." Aurora staggered. "Why not both?" The vision tilted its head. "Because one of them will kill the other." The ground split beneath her. Flames rose. Wolves howled from the dark. And then a voice echoed through the dream. Not hers. Her mother's. "Aurora. Child of blood and starlight. You cannot save him, if you become what made him." Then the vision screamed, and the world shattered like glass. Aurora jolted awake, gasping, back in her bed. Kael sat up instantly, hand on her arm. "Aurora?" She gripped him, trembling. Her voice cracked. "I saw myself, with his mark." Kael stilled. She buried her face in his chest. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to stop it." Kael wrapped his arms around her and whispered into her hair. "Then we burn fate down and write a new one." The next morning, a messenger arrived at the gates. Not a rogue. Not a shifter. A child. Barefoot. Dust-covered. Eyes wide with terror. She held a simple iron box no larger than a wolf's paw. Carved with ancient runes that even Kael hadn't seen in centuries. She didn't speak. She just held it out to the guards, her hands trembling. By the time Kael reached the courtyard, the girl was gone, vanished into mist like she'd never existed. And the box pulsed. Kael didn't want Aurora to open it. But she did anyway. Inside was no letter. No weapon. Just a single silver thread. And a single drop of blood suspended in a clear glass orb, her blood. As soon as she touched it, her body seized. Magic tore through her mind like a tidal wave, not painful, but too much. Her knees hit stone. Kael caught her before she fell entirely, shouting her name. But she didn't hear him. She was already somewhere else. Snow. A battlefield soaked in crimson. Dozens of corpses, wolves and vampires alike. And at the center, a woman. Cloaked in white. Long silver hair matted with blood. Her face was obscured, but her aura felt achingly familiar. Aurora took a step closer. And realized she was looking at her mother. But not the way she remembered her. This woman was a warrior. Her hands dripped with blood. Her fangs were extended. And behind her, bound in chains, was a man with crimson eyes. Kael's father. The woman turned. Her eyes were Aurora's. "Aurora," she said, but not to her. To the man. "This child will be the end of your line." The man spat blood. "She will be hunted. She will be unstoppable." Then the vision blurred, twisted, split. Aurora saw flames. She saw Kael as a child, screaming in the ashes of a burning manor. She saw herself, not yet born, pulsing in her mother's womb, her blood glowing like starlight. Then silence. Then a voice, Silas's voice, dripping into her ear like venom. "Now you know why Kael loves you, Aurora. You were made from the blood that killed his family." She snapped back to reality, gasping. Kael gripped her shoulders. "What did you see?" She looked into his eyes. The same eyes she'd seen in his father. And whispered. "I think my mother killed your father." Kael didn't flinch. But the silence between them? It bled. Silence. That was all that filled the room after Aurora's confession. Not anger. Not denial. Just silence. Kael hadn't moved. He still held her arms, but his hands had gone cold. His eyes, those impossible crimson eyes, stared into hers like searching for a lie. There wasn't one. "I saw it," Aurora whispered again. "Your father. Bound. My mother, she was changed. I didn't know she was capable of that." Kael's voice came low and rough. "My father wasn't a good man." Aurora blinked. Kael finally let go of her arms and turned away. "He taught me how to tear out a heart before I could read." Kael. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "I remember the night the manor burned. I thought rogues had come for us. But I never saw the one who did it. I only saw fire. And heard my mother scream." Aurora's chest ached. "She must have had a reason." "Doesn't matter." He looked over his shoulder. "My mother died that night. My childhood ended that night. And now I find out the woman I'm bound to, whose blood sings in my veins, was born from the hand that took everything from me." The words landed like a blow. Aurora took a shaky step forward. "I didn't ask for this." "I know." He wasn't yelling. That was worse. "I'm not her, Kael." "I know." She reached for him again, her hand brushing his, but he didn't take it. "Does it change us?" she asked. Kael looked at her, really looked. Not at the bloodline. Not at the prophecy. At her. "It should," he said. And then, after a breath. "But it doesn't." Aurora felt her knees nearly give. Kael stepped closer, gently pressing his forehead to hers. "I didn't fall in love with your lineage," he said. "I fell in love with the girl who threatened to break my ribs in training and lit a revenant on fire with nothing but rage and moonlight." She laughed, tearfully. But then his voice dropped. "But we have to be honest about what this means." She nodded. "Silas knows. He's trying to tear us apart with it." Kael's jaw flexed. "Then we use it." She frowned. "How?" He looked toward the distant mountains, where Silas's armies gathered and the final moon of the eclipse would rise in days. "We find out what really happened that night," Kael said. "Your mother's truth. My father's secrets. Everything Silas is using to control the past." He turned back to her. "We burn it." 3 days later, the forest changed. Aurora felt it in her bones before they crossed the border, before the scent of ash and ancient earth filled her lungs, before Kael slowed his pace and scanned the trees like ghosts were watching. Here, the trees were blackened. Not burned. cursed. Twisted, as if magic had melted them mid-growth and frozen them in agony. "This is it," Kael said. "The place your father died?" Aurora asked. He nodded. It wasn't much. Just a clearing overgrown with thorn vine and shadows. A shattered stone stairwell led downward, swallowed by moss and time. What once had been a fortress, a stronghold of bloodline power, was now buried beneath the earth, erased from maps, memory, and mercy. Aurora stepped closer to the stairwell and placed her palm against the moss-covered stone. It shivered. And the whispers came. Not words. Memories. A woman screaming. A child crying. Chains. Fire. Betrayal. Kael was at her side in a flash. "You're hearing it?" She nodded slowly. "This place, it remembers." Together, they descended. The tunnel grew colder. The air thicker. Runes long dead flickered weakly as they passed, reacting to Aurora's blood, Kael's presence. The bond between them wasn't just power. It was key. At the base of the stairwell, they found it. A chamber. Circular. Hollowed out. Ancient. At its center, a mirror. Cracked. But glowing. Aurora stepped forward. And the mirror responded. Flashes burst across the glass. Her mother, younger, standing before this very mirror. A blade in her hand. A child in her arms. Blood dripping onto the stone. Kael watched, unmoving. Aurora gasped. She made a pact. Here. What kind of pact? Kael asked. She stepped forward, trance-like. And spoke, not in her own voice. By moon's blood and cursed flame, I break the bond that binds me. My child will not serve the thrones of blood nor the moons of tooth. She will choose her fate. Aurora collapsed. Kael caught her, lowering her gently to the ground. Her eyes glowed silver, her skin pulsed with magic. She tried to protect me, Aurora whispered. She tried to keep me out of the prophecy. Kael looked back at the mirror. But Silas found a way to drag you back in. Aurora nodded. The pact was made here. But it wasn't sealed. Kael's voice was grim. Then we seal it. Now. She looked up at him. And the glass cracked again. Because something else had been awakened beneath this ruin. Not a memory. Not a ghost. But something alive. The mirror shattered with a whisper. No explosion. No flare. Just a sound like a breath drawn after centuries of silence. The runes along the chamber walls lit up, one by one, crimson, then silver, then black. The light twisted across the floor, outlining a circle neither Kael nor Aurora had seen before. A symbol of twin wolves. One devouring the moon. Kael rose slowly, eyes locked on the seal. There's something beneath us, he said. Aurora nodded. And it remembers. The stone circle trembled. And split. A shaft opened downward, revealing a spiraling staircase carved from black bone. Every instinct in Kael screamed to shield her, to tell her to stay behind. But he knew better by now. They descended together. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Not the chill of death. But of ancient purpose. The air smelled of forgotten blood and old magic. At the base, they found a chamber hollowed into the mountain's roots. And at the center, a throne. Empty. Until it wasn't. A figure rose from the darkness, tall, impossibly tall, skin like cracked obsidian, hair silver white and floating as if underwater. Its eyes were voids. Its voice came from everywhere. Children of flame and fong, you walk where no blood dares flow. Kael's claws flexed. Who are you? I am the Pact Keeper, the being intoned. The last witness. The last jailer. Aurora stepped forward. You were here when the original Crimson Pact was made. The being inclined its head slowly. And when it was broken, she looked to Kael. This thing, it was the one who sealed the pact. The one who watched. The Pact Keeper turned its gaze on her. You bear her mark. The moon-cursed one. Aurora's breath hitched. My mother. She came to undo what she once agreed to. To free you. To sever your name from prophecy. But the bloodlines run deeper than intent. Kael growled. And now Silas is using those broken pieces to build something twisted. The Pact Keeper's voice grew colder. Silas comes not to rule, but to replace. He has found the unwritten rune, the language before blood. And with it, he means to rewrite fate. Aurora blinked. He can rewrite the prophecy? No, the being said. He can make a new one. Kael stepped forward. Then help us stop him. The Pact Keeper paused. One can only hold fate by surrendering choice. Aurora frowned. What does that mean? You must choose what she could not. Bind your soul to Kael's in the old way. A bond not of instinct, but of oath. It will make you more than hybrid. Its eyes pulsed like dying stars. It will make you anchor. And it will cost you everything. Silence. Aurora felt Kael's hand reach for hers. She gripped it tightly. Then show us, she said. We'll pay the price. The Pact Keeper raised a single arm, and the chamber responded. Stone groaned. Runes spiraled from the floor in a web of shifting light, red, silver, black, and gold. The walls pulsed with memory, whispering in voices neither Kael nor Aurora could understand. Kael glanced at her. We can still turn back. No, Aurora whispered. If Silas is rewriting the prophecy, then we have to write our own. Right now. The Pact Keeper stepped aside. Then stepped forward. And bleed the vow. They moved together to the center of the circle. A pedestal rose from the ground, carved with two hollow grooves shaped like hands, side by side. Between them, a dagger of obsidian and bone floated, suspended by unseen force. Kael took a slow breath. You sure? Aurora nodded. This isn't about power. Or prophecy. Her eyes met his. It's about us. They reached for the dagger at the same time. Their hands brushed. The dagger fell. But before it could strike stone, it stopped midair. Vibrating, glowing, feeding on the truth between them. The Pact Keeper spoke. Speak your vow. And seal what blood cannot undo. Kael turned to her. His voice was low. Fierce. Raw. I vow not to own you. Not to tame you. But to walk beside you when the world forgets your name. To guard the fire in you, even when it burns me. He took the dagger and sliced his palm. Blood fell into the groove. Aurora took it next, hand steady. I vow not to follow. Not to fade. But to fight for you when you forget how. To see the man beneath the monster, and never look away. She cut her palm. Blood spilled into the second groove. The chamber shuddered. Light erupted. Their blood shimmered, twisted, merged in the stone basin between their hands. Silver met crimson. Moon met flame. Prophecy met defiance. And the magic accepted. The Pact Keeper stepped back. It is done. Runes carved themselves into their skin. Glowing lines that curved along Kael's spine, wrapped around Aurora's arms, and met where their fingers interlocked. A new bond. An oath. Not one chosen by fate, but by will. As the runes faded into their skin, Kael pulled her to him, not out of instinct, but out of certainty. He kissed her, deep and slow. And in that moment, there were no monsters. No wars. No bloodlines. Only the two of them, standing at the edge of prophecy, and refusing to fall. Miles away, beneath a blackened sky and a moon that no longer cast light, Silas stood before a stone circle of his own. His claws were soaked in blood, not borrowed. His own. Behind him, his army stirred, waiting. Watching. Some muttered, others growled, but all were uneasy. Something had shifted. And Silas, he was no longer smiling. A shadow moved beside him, hunched, quiet, silent as a grave. Did they complete it? Silas asked without turning. The creature nodded once. Yes. The words were barely a breath. Silas exhaled slowly. Then we are out of time. He turned at last and faced the stone coffin at the center of the circle, sealed with runes so old they predated even the first blood wars. He pressed a hand to the lid. It burned him. He didn't flinch. Kael has defied fate. Again, Silas murmured. He thinks he can reshape the world. He dug his nails into the stone. Let him watch it burn. With one final push of blood and command, the seal broke. The lid cracked open. And from the coffin, a body sat up. Not decayed. Not monstrous. Perfect. A young man, perhaps 20, with skin like Kael's, bone structure identical, and crimson eyes that held no soul. Silas smiled again. Hollow. Hello, Aravan. The boy looked up, eyes vacant. Silas touched his shoulder. Your brother is alive. But you were meant to replace him. The boy said nothing. Only blinked. Kael had spoken of his family rarely. But once, long ago, he had whispered to Aurora in the dead of night. I had a brother. Younger. Quiet. Fragile. He died in the fire. But Silas had found him. And twisted the boy's broken body into something immortal. Not a revenant. Not a puppet. A shadow. Aravan rose. And behind him, the mist swallowed the stars. Back in the fortress, Aurora staggered as her bond flared with warning. Pain cut down her spine, Kael's pain. She turned to him. What is it? Kael's face was pale. I just felt something, he whispered. Something that should be dead. His voice dropped. My brother. The wind changed. Aurora felt it first, an unnatural stillness rolling in from the east, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. Birds vanished. The mist refused to drift. Even the stones beneath their feet tensed. Kael stood at the castle's eastern watchtower, eyes locked on the tree line. Crimson flickered faintly in his irises, but it wasn't his vampire side stirring. It was something older. Something personal. Aurora joined him at the parapet, still catching her breath from the vision. Kael, she said gently, tell me what you saw. He didn't look at her. I saw a face I thought I'd never see again. She waited. Then, my brother, Aravan. He died in the fire. I saw his body. He was frail, the curse of our bloodline skipped him. My father said he was a mistake. Aurora's heart ached. You loved him. Kael nodded slowly. More than anyone. He was kind. The only softness in that damned manner. I tried to save him when the fire came, but he was already gone. I buried what was left. His hand gripped the stone ledge hard enough to crack it. And now, he whispered, I feel him. Not like memory. Not like grief. I feel his blood. Aurora laid a hand over his. You think Silas brought him back? I don't think. I know. And then, from the forest below, came a voice. Soft. Familiar. Kael's voice. But younger. Brother. Kael staggered back as if struck. Aurora spun, searching the dark. And then they saw him. Auravan. Standing at the tree line, pale and perfect. Unchanged from the boy Kael once knew, but too still. His eyes, though crimson, held nothing inside. Not even anger. Just silence. Kael jumped the wall before Aurora could stop him. She followed in wolf form, landing beside him in a crouch. Auravan tilted his head. You never came back. Kael's voice cracked. You died. I saw the flames. I waited, Auravan said, voice flat. But Silas found me first. He gave me a new body. A better one. One that doesn't need warmth. Or fear. Or a heart. Aurora stepped forward, eyes glowing silver. He made you into a weapon. I asked him to, Auravan said. Because you left me. Kael's claws unsheathed. No. You're not him. Auravan would never say that. The boy's eyes narrowed. I'm what you made. And then he moved. Fast. Faster than Kael. Kael barely blocked the strike. Their claws clashed, crimson and silver magic exploding between them. Aurora joined instantly, flanking, but Auravan didn't flinch. He was exactly as strong as Kael. And he knew every move his brother would make. Because Kael had taught him. Claws. Steel. Blood. The forest exploded around them. Kael and Auravan moved like mirrored shadows, too fast for the wolves above on the battlements to follow. It was like watching memory fight reflection. Same stance. Same instincts. But Auravan wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to break. Every strike aimed not at Kael's body, but his heart. Why didn't you save me? Auravan spat, slamming Kael into a tree, bark exploding behind them. I tried. Kael roared back, kicking free, flipping them through the air and landing hard. I never stopped trying. You let him burn me, Auravan whispered. You let father tell me I was weak, and you believed him. Kael froze, just for a moment. And Auravan struck again. Kael was hurled into the stone ridge at the forest's edge. He didn't rise immediately. Blood streamed from his temple. His claws trembled. Aurora's wolf form snarled. She had stayed out of it as long as she could. Because this wasn't just war. It was grief. But Kael was fading, not just physically. In spirit. And Auravan. Auravan was no longer a boy. He was a curse wearing a familiar face. She shifted mid-leap, returning to human form, her feet slamming into the ground with power crackling at her fingertips. Silver flames coiled around her arms. Stop, she shouted. Auravan turned to her slowly, crimson eyes glowing. Don't you dare speak for him, he said. You weren't there. I didn't have to be, Aurora said, stepping forward. I see him now. And I see you. And I don't care what Silas carved into your bones, there is still a piece of you in there. A piece that doesn't want to do this. Auravan faltered. Just for a second. Kael rose behind him. Shaking. Broken. But burning. Auravan, he said, voice hoarse, if you're still in there, fight him. Fight Silas. Silence. Then Auravan's expression twisted, not in anger. In pain. I tried, he whispered. I tried every day in the dark to stay myself. He turned back to Aurora. But your blood sings louder than mine. You're bonded. You're stronger. He doesn't need me anymore. And then he lunged at her, one final strike. Kael moved. Too slow. Aurora summoned everything. Silver fire erupted from her palms. It met Aravan's claws midair, not as an attack. As a barrier. It burned. Not his body. His soul. Aravan screamed, not in rage, but in something far worse. Regret. He fell to his knees. And whispered, "I'm sorry." Kael was beside him instantly, cradling him, blood pouring through his hands. No. No, no, no. But Aravan smiled, faintly. You saved me this time. Then the light in his eyes died. Kael didn't move. Didn't breathe. Aurora knelt beside him, tears streaking down her cheeks. Her voice shook. He wasn't a monster, Kael. Kael pressed his forehead to his brother's. I know. And in that moment, the forest did something it hadn't done in years. It wept. They burned Aravan's body at dawn. Not on the pyres used for fallen warriors, but on a silver-laced altar in the old woods, under the crescent moon. A quiet fire. No howls. No ceremony. Just Kael. Aurora. Leora. And silence. The flames didn't roar. They whispered. Aurora stood beside Kael, her hand tightly wrapped in his. He hadn't let go of it once since Aravan fell. His grip was iron, but not to restrain her, to anchor himself. The air was still. Leora stepped forward at last, placing a small iron sigil at the edge of the pyre, a symbol of Kael's lineage. One few had seen. The mark of the blood moon vow. Gone too soon, she said. But not empty. Aurora turned to Kael gently. He saved you. Kael nodded once, his face unreadable. In the end, he remembered. They stood until the flames died to ash. And then, quietly, something strange happened. The wind shifted. The ashes swirled upward. Unnaturally, forming shapes in the smoke. Letters. Marks. Runes. Kael stepped forward, frowning. That's an old dialect. Aurora's eyes narrowed. He left a message. Leora blinked. In his blood? No, Kael said, voice flat. In his soul. Aurora reached out toward the swirling smoke. Magic hummed beneath her skin. The symbols gathered, aligned, and then spoke. Not in voice. In memory. A final message, buried deep. He's not trying to win the war. He's trying to merge them. Wolf. Vampire. Hybrid. Bound into one dominion. No more species. Only Silas. He's found the heart of the rift. The original source. The first hybrid's grave. If he awakens it, he doesn't need an army. He becomes prophecy itself. The smoke dispersed. Aurora staggered back. Kael caught her. The heart of the rift, she whispered. I thought it was legend. Kael shook his head, eyes narrowing. No. It's real. And it lies at the center of the Rift Valley. The place no bloodline has dared enter for 500 years. Leora stepped closer, grim. You'll never reach it alive. Silas is already moving. Aurora looked at Kael. Kael looked at the ashes. We don't need to reach it alive, he said. We need to reach it first. No map could lead them. No compass could guide them. The rift was not a place. It was a scar. Carved long ago, in a time when the first vampire betrayed the first wolf. When blood was mixed not for power, but out of desperation. A place where the rules of death, magic, and memory bent. Broke. Forgot themselves. Only two would enter. Kael. Aurora. No army. No pack. No witnesses. Just bond. And will. They stood at the edge by nightfall, a cliff overlooking a chasm that pulsed with soft, blue light. The wind here didn't howl. It whispered names. Old ones. Kael's jaw clenched. The ground doesn't want us here. Aurora tightened the straps of her blades across her back. Neither did fate. He smirked. Good thing we stopped listening. She took his hand. The runes from the oath bond shimmered across both their arms. Glowing. Ready. Together, she asked. He nodded. Always. They leapt. The rift swallowed them. Falling wasn't like falling. The air thickened, turned liquid. Cold ran up their spines. Their bond glowed brighter with every second they descended. Then. Impact. But no pain. Aurora opened her eyes to light. The rift wasn't black. It was silver. The earth beneath them was glass, reflecting stars they couldn't see. Shapes flickered in the corners of her vision, ghosts of wolves, vampires, hybrids long dead. But they weren't angry. They were watching. Kael exhaled slowly. It's beautiful. Aurora nodded. And wrong. The ground pulsed. Then shifted. Ahead, a vast structure rose from the glass, ancient stone, half-collapsed, vines glowing with soft bioluminescence. And at its center. A sarcophagus. Massive. Covered in chains. Symbols older than language carved into every inch. Kael stepped forward. The heart of the rift. They approached slowly. Aurora's blood sang louder with every step. Her skin burned. Her bond pulled tight. Kael reached the edge. There, carved into the base, was a single sentence. He who awakens the first hybrid becomes it. Aurora swallowed. Silas doesn't want power. He wants to erase identity. Merge every line into one. Become the origin. The source. Kael touched the lid. It's not awake yet. Aurora turned. No. And then a sound behind them. Clapping. Slow. Echoing. They spun. Silas stepped from the shadows, calm, radiant, his aura pulsing with dark light. You made it, he said, smiling. Aurora stepped in front of Kael. We always were going to. Silas nodded once. I hoped you would. He raised a hand. The chains across the sarcophagus snapped. I wanted you here, he whispered. Because you're going to watch me ascend. The chains broke with a sound like stars screaming. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Cracks splintered through the glass earth, glowing with ancient veins of red and silver. The lid of the sarcophagus groaned. Then. Silence. Silas stood unmoving, eyes locked on the crypt. His hands glowed with power drawn from hundreds of bloodlines, stolen magic, twisted spells, dead names. I've come to finish it, he said, voice low. Reverent. No more wolves. No more vampires. No more hybrids. Only one blood. One rule. Kael's fangs extended. You mean yours? Silas didn't even glance at him. He was already reaching out. The moment his hand touched the sarcophagus, the air collapsed inward, gravity snapped, and a pulse of force slammed outward, knocking Aurora and Kael to their knees. The sarcophagus lid slid open. Light poured out, not warm, not golden, but pure white. Empty. Clean. Terrifying. And from the stone tomb, rose nothing. Nothing they could see. But Aurora fell to the ground screaming. Kael caught her, barely, as her body convulsed. Her eyes rolled back. Her markings burned silver-white, brighter than any time before. Runes shimmered around her in midair, not summoned, but recognized. Silas froze. "No," he whispered. "No." Aurora's mouth opened. And something else spoke. "She is not your vessel, Silas. She is the key. You thought the first hybrid slept within the rift. You were wrong. She walks. She breathes. She chooses." Kael stared, his heart stopping. "Aurora." The voice echoed again, hers, but layered with thousands of others. "You fed her with prophecy. You woke what you feared. Now face what you created." Aurora's body lifted from the ground, floating, surrounded in a swirl of light and flame. Her hair whipped like a halo of starlight. Her wolf form glimmered beneath her skin, shifting in and out, hybrid, divine, unknowable. Kael rose slowly, eyes locked on her. "She's not becoming the first hybrid," he whispered. Leora's old words echoed in his mind. "She's what comes after." Silas took a step back. "No. I made you. I unleashed you." Aurora's eyes opened. They weren't silver. They were everything. "I am not your ending, Silas," she said. "I'm your replacement." And with that, she breathed. Magic exploded outward. The rift screamed. And Silas? He burned. Not in flame. In memory. In every lie he'd told. Every soul he'd twisted. Every scar he'd branded. They returned to him, one by one, folding inward, until the prophecy he wrote turned on its author. His body crumbled. Ash. Gone. Aurora fell. Kael caught her before she hit the ground. And in that moment, surrounded by glass, stars, and silence, the rift closed. Not with a war. But with a choice. She woke to birdsong. Not the eerie cries of the rift, nor the silence of blood-wet stone, but real birds, rustling leaves, wind that smelled like life. Aurora opened her eyes slowly. Sunlight filtered through tall pines. A river murmured nearby. The air was warm on her skin. She was lying in soft grass, wrapped in Kael's cloak. And Kael was there. Sitting nearby, silent, watching her like she might disappear. "How long?" she asked, voice hoarse. He smiled. 3 days. She tried to sit up. Her body ached, but it was no longer burning. I thought the rift closed," he said. "The ground sealed behind us after Silas fell. It's gone now. Whatever magic built it, it finished its work." She looked around. "This isn't the fortress." "No," he said softly. "We're far north. On the old packlands, near where your mother was born." She went quiet. "I don't remember leaving." Kael leaned in, brushing a hand through her hair. "You didn't. I carried you." Of course he did. Her chest ached, but not from pain. From relief. And then it hit her. The weight. The quiet. The prophecy, she whispered. "Dead," he said. "And Silas?" "Burned. Ash. Memory." Aurora nodded slowly. "So what now?" Kael looked at her for a long time. And smiled. "Now we live." The weeks that followed were quiet. The fortress was rebuilt, not as a throne of war, but as a sanctuary. Wolves, vampires, hybrids, came from every edge of the broken world. Not in fear. But in hope. The old laws were burned. The council was reshaped. Leora took her seat at Aurora's left hand. Kael ruled beside her, not as alpha, but as equal. As mate. And every night, when the moon rose over the hills, Aurora stood beneath it and whispered her mother's name. Not as a prayer. As a promise. To never let them return to what they were. To never let power become a cage again. And Kael? He never let go of her hand. Not through treaties. Not through rebuilding. Not through the child she would one day carry, not of prophecy, not of bloodline, but of choice. Their story began in fire. But it ended. In peace. The end.